I'd like to call the April 15, 2019 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. We'll do roll call. Commissioner Clare is not available. Commissioner Littlefield?
Present.
Ward 3 is vacant right now. We go to Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Present.
Commissioner George?
Here.
And Commissioner Milner?
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. Can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the March 18, 2019 meeting, please?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner George. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hale. Do we have any discussion on the minutes of March 18th? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 18, 2019 meeting from Commissioner George, second by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to the licensed taxi and wrecker services. All yours, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is our first quarterly report for the year. Been a little slow, besides other things that have transpired, but I'll go through this. Our taxi permits for this quarter, 32 new, 29 renewed. Vehicle inspections for taxis, we had 19 pass, 6 fail. 1 complaint, 4 investigations, 9 citations. On limousines, 5 new, 2 renewed driver's permits. On carriages, 1 renewed driver's permit. Pedicabs, 3 new, 2 renewed, and 1 pedicab passed. And then on shuttles, 8 new and 15 renewed. As you know, Yellow Cab has shut their doors down, which has left quite a void in the city. They had a little over 100 cars operating at the time. We have 4 companies, and it looks like we might be having 2 more come on board here in the near future. But right now, we're only around 54 taxis for the whole city, so it's down quite a bit from when I started.
So what have you heard about the 100 from Yellow Cab? What's the...
They're slowly, the other 4 companies are slowly building up from Yellow Cab's fleet and their cars and their drivers, but it's slow. I expect it to be a lot faster, like most of the time when they move over to other companies, but the biggest problem is they don't have enough cars to facilitate drivers. So,
because the Yellow worked off of that, they were Yellow taxi cabs that
yes.
the drivers used or rented or leased?
Right. There were fleet owners that would have maybe 5 to 6 cars of their own, which they leased out to drivers, and then you had drivers that owned their own vehicles. If the drivers owned their own vehicle, then they're able to transfer over to or move to the other company and get their car repainted and re-inspected. So that's a quick move over. But if they don't have a car, then it's been an issue at this point.
Okay. Very good. Anybody have anything else for the sergeant? All right. Thank you for your time and your efforts. Okay, there's no items on the consent docket, so we go to item 5, items for individual consideration. Amazing GH Express LTD Company doing business as Yellow Ride OKC to consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from Amazing GH Express LTD Company doing business as Yellow Ride OKC to operate 50 vehicles in taxi service. Is there anybody here to speak on item 5A? Okay, staff.
All right, you've got your comments before you. Supervisor of Permits and Licenses has forwarded us an application for Amazing GH Express LTD doing business as Yellow Ride OKC to operate 50 vehicles in taxi service. The applicant has indicated that they're going to be operating under that name and that their vehicles are going to bear a yellow monochrome paint scheme with black front and rear bumpers. This was the same color scheme that was utilized by Yellow Cab Company of Oklahoma, which ceased operations at midnight on March 24th of this year. Since there aren't any provisions in Chapter 56 prohibiting the reuse of the name and of a similar name and the color scheme for a taxi company that is no longer licensed, staff is recommending approval of the application as presented. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you very much. So we have a motion concerning item 5A.
Move approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner George to approve item 5A. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5B. Josh Melwick, PE, Senior Engineer, Atkins, North America, to consider a request to establish a reserved parking space for the physically disabled within an existing lay-by on the north side of Northwest 25th Street from approximately 42 feet west to 74 feet west of the west curb line of North Clausen Boulevard. Do you have anybody here to speak on item 5B? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
Okay, got all the comments before you. As noted, the applicant seeking to establish a reserved parking space for the physically disabled within a lay-by that was constructed on the north side of 25th Street. It's in progress of being prepared to be striped as a disabled parking space. It conforms with ADA requirements. Staff would recommend approval of this item as it is presented.
Okay, do we have a motion for 5B?
I motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Milner. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have any talk on this item?
I was just kind of curious how this came about. Is it for a business, or is it that they don't have enough handicap, so the city's providing it for them?
It was part of a streetscape project, and when 25th Street was resurfaced, the curb line on the south side of the road has moved north. There had been some angle parking on that side, but it was never documented or previously approved, and so when they straightened the curb lines out, they were still left with a lay-by an inset area on the north side of the road. It was not deep enough to accommodate a request to convert it to angle parking, so in order to utilize it in some form, they've opted to provide a space for the physically disabled to use.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other discussion on item 5B? We have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Milner, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to 5C, John M. Fudge, to consider a request for a mid-block pedestrian crossing on North Chartel Avenue, approximately 170 feet south of the south curb line of West Sheridan Avenue. Do we have anybody here to speak on this item? Yes, ma'am. If I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Gina Foxhoven, 726 West Sheridan Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73102. We would like to add a crosswalk in the yellow area designated on this map. We have two entry gates into either side of our campus. On either side of that, where employees are crossing daily at 4 different time frames. We have approximately 170 employees in addition to events happening at each building where both lots are reserved, up to 100 people crossing that during each event. Specifically at night, it becomes more of an issue, but daytime as well. Traffic is going through that area due to construction happening and people trying to get around that, so they're taking that more often. And it's a clear pathway between the two gates and that opening.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wanting to speak on item 5C? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
Okay, this item was continued from the March meeting. The commission had wanted someone who was able to commit to making financial obligations on behalf of the applicant to be able to speak and address the item. That being said, that was requested because in the staff summary of recommendations, staff is recommending that if the item is approved, staff is recommending that the approval be subject to the applicant bearing the responsibility for the preparation of construction plans to rebuild basically where our driveway approaches so that they are ADA accessible ramps, which means they would have tactile domes and they would be in conformance with all ADA requirements for a ramp. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, so ma'am, if you could come back up. As the staff put, there is a cost to the applicant
Yes.
to get the 2 points ADA ready, so then we could come in as the city and stripe it appropriately.
Correct.
Is the applicant willing to pay that?
Yes, up to $25,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Move approval of the application.
We have a motion to approve from
Based on
Commissioner
the
George.
comments of the,
Well, yes, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner George that include the staff recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any talk on item 5C? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C, which includes staff recommendation from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. All right, we go on now to item 5D. Bruce Davis, to consider request to, 1, change the speed limit on North Kelly Avenue between Northeast 42nd Street and Northeast 50th Street from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour, or 2, change the speed limit on North Kelly Avenue between Northeast 36th Street and Northeast 50th Street from 45 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour. Anybody here to speak on item 5D? Yes, sir. If I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Davis. I live at 4705 North Kelly, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73311, and I've lived there since 1996. I'm a retired Oklahoma City police officer. Used to be able to control the traffic there with my take-home car, but that's no longer an option. I did read the traffic study, and I just wanted to add a couple of things before you guys make your decision. The 5 comparison streets there that were in that study are, to my recollection, 4-lane streets with curbs. Kelly is not. It's a 2-lane street with no curbs. Also, in the reported accidents, I believe you guys got the accidents from the police department probably. And just from my being there from 1996, matter of fact, a person totaled their car in my yard where the trees are. They've taken my fence down several times. The lady across the street, she had a brick mailbox that's been taken out several times. And actually, I went and put some boulders because people would just do hit and run, so I put boulders in my car, and I've been able to catch a couple of people and have them pay for my property. So again, the reason I had suggested lowering it to 35 miles an hour is because about 200 yards going northbound right before you get to Kelly, right before you get to 42nd, there's a yellow caution sign that has the X in it that says 35 miles an hour. And I looked at that. Now, the problem, again, is not doing rush hour. Rush hour traffic is basically perfect, and that's between, 3 and maybe 6 p.m., and I think it's less than 45 miles an hour. The problem comes after 7 and late at night where you have cars actually going through there doing 65, 70 miles an hour. And even 16-wheelers going 55, 60 miles an hour through a residential area is going to be a disaster. So I would agree with the second alternative, but some type of traffic control is going to be necessary in that area. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else want to speak on item 5D? Okay, staff?
All right, you've got our comments before you. When reviewing this particular request, we did go out and conduct a spot speed study on Kelly Avenue between 42nd and 50th Street in the early part of March. The 85th percentile speed we observed during our study was 45 miles an hour, which is the currently posted limit on Kelly. I want to note that when we also conducted the study, in our data analysis, we note that those drivers that are traveling 35 miles an hour or less make up about 16% of the traffic volume on Kelly, and those traveling at 40 miles an hour or less make up about 48%. Although the speed limit reduction requested is in compliance with state law, in as much as it's a change, it's not greater than 10 miles an hour from the speed limit posted on either of the adjacent miles on Kelly Avenue. The introduction of a 1/2 mile long speed zone that's, reduced speed zone, which would start at a mid-mile location, will be unexpected and probably go unnoticed by most drivers. which is why it's an alternative. We submitted for the Commission's consideration, an alternative, which is to change the speed limit on this one section to go to 40 miles an hour, which will allow it to provide a speed transition between the 35-mile-an-hour section to the south and the 45 to the north. Now, like I noted earlier, about half the drivers travel 40 or less on Kelly currently. And for that reason, what we did is we included on page 4 of your staff report, we had gone back through and done a series of speed studies on some other locations where the Commission had voted to reduce speeds. There's a half dozen locations that are noted, and you'll see that a lot of these locations, there's not been a significant speed change on at any of these locations since being reposted. So that's just, at this point in time, that's just provided for the Commission's benefit. So based on driver expectation, staff is kind of anticipating that even if reposted to 40 miles an hour, probably the prevailing speed limit speed will probably remain about where it is at 45. So action on the item is going to be at the discretion of the Commission. So you've got options A, or option 1, which is to take the applicant's request to do a half-mile reduction on a half-mile of Kelly between Northeast 42nd and 50th to take that to 35, or the alternative item in Part 2, which would be a reduction for a full mile between Northeast 36th and Northeast 50th, and that'd be taking it from 45 to 40. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this item.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5D?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve item 2. I like the 40 mile an hour for a mile rather than 35 for half mile, and I think it fits in better with the speed. I drove that this past weekend, and I know what you're saying about the 2-lane road. It's just been overlaid, I don't know how long ago, so usually speed picks up for a while on a new overlaid road, freshly striped. Speed study was done in March. It probably didn't have all the bushes in bloom and all the leaves and the mailboxes, and it does look like it, but I was comfortable driving the speed limit, even though I was paying attention, but I just like the 40. I think it's be more compliant, and we'll get more driver compliance. If we set them too low, it just be causing a speed trap. And you being a law enforcement officer, you know, how could you possibly enforce that when you know that 80% of the drivers are exceeding the speed limit if we posted at 35? You know you can't enforce that. So what do you get from that? A speed trap when you decide to do it. So to me, the 40 makes more sense.
Okay, do we have a second concerning item 5D? We have a second for subpoint number 2. So we have a motion from Commissioner Miller to approve item 5D number 2, seconded by Commissioner George. Do we have any discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5D subpart 2 from Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner George. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5E, Peter R. Capadona, to consider a request for the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of Hidden Creek Boulevard and Northwest 122nd Street. Do we have anybody here to speak on this item? Yes, sir. If I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Peter Capadona, 12404 Maiden Lane, and I initiated the letter. It's basically, the letter says that, in my opinion, that street has very high-speed traffic. It's extremely difficult for people to get out onto 122nd Street during rush hour, or actually somewhere 10 to roughly 6 o'clock. We're older, we have less reaction time. You've had a new library on 122nd Street. You've had Oak Grove. That shopping center has drawn a lot of traffic. We've had urban sprawl in the northwest part of the city, burdening services. We've had a number of call centers, and for some reason they like 122nd Street instead of the Turnpike or Memorial. I'm just reiterating that I think it's very unsafe. We've been lucky there's been no accidents, but it continues to grow. So I just ask for a traffic light, and we're curious what one would cost, if you have that number off the top of your head.
With widening the intersection, it would probably be in the it would be upwards of about $500,000,
Really?
probably closer to $750,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We have some other ones that sign up to talk. Whichever one would like to go next. We got Patty and Sue. If I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Sue Capadona. Obviously, I'm related to the gentleman that just spoke. 122nd Street is extremely busy. This area where we live in Hidden Creek was marketed for and designed for senior people. There are 4 developments in there that are smaller homes, so that's who is living there. We are living there. So pulling out onto that street is probably a little riskier than a normal population would be. It is for us. And I just wanted to support this. I think breaking down that steady stream of traffic on 122nd, it's just almost immovable at certain times of day. If you break that down by one light there, it's broken by a light at MacArthur and at Meridian. That would let us ease out into that traffic. I just wanted to support it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And we have one more that signed up to speak. Ma'am, if I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Patty Lehman, and I'm at 5605 Northwest 125th Street, that's 73142. And I'm speaking of it, I've lived there for about 5 years, from a safety angle, and it's not only the older drivers like me who are bad drivers on that, but a lot of traffic goes right down the street to John Marshall. There are lots of teenagers there, and there are a lot of us older people who have children and grandchildren who are using that. And this Hidden Creek area has only one access road from 122nd to get in and get out. There are no other ways that we can get out except a helicopter. And so we all have to use that. And I believe there are over 200, I don't know the exact number, I know there are over 200 homes just in that one area. Sparks Grocery Store, all of these new things that have come in have brought in people from surrounding areas too. So the interest of safety, I would support this.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wanting to speak on item 5E? Oh, sure. Please come on up. When you're done talking, fill out one of these green forms for us. If I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Ronald Harwood. My wife and I live at 412 Maiden Lane. Prior to moving there, we lived in Bocage, 3 blocks down the way. It had also significant problems of getting out on 122nd, nothing compared to the year we've lived now at Maiden Lane. Specifically, aside from older people, younger people, immaterial to me. When you try to get out of Maiden Lane and turn left, which would be east, you'll find that there's a rise in the road. You cannot see the car coming from the left as you're trying to get out to go east. That's number one. Number two, if a car pulls in from Maiden Lane behind you and pulls up, that they're interested in exiting west. So they pull up, pardon me, their car behind you or next to you, there's enough room, and you're trying to go left, you cannot see a car coming, heading east on the other side. I don't know how many homes there are in this whole area, significant. In addition to that, you have all types of Amazon trucks, you name it, coming in to this area. So I'm very surprised to hear a number. Did I hear a number of $500,000? Where did that number come from?
Those are typical costs incurred when a traffic signal is
No,
put
I'm
up.
saying, but has there been a study that shows with a bid from contractors as to what it would cost to put up a light there?
The costs vary based on location.
So the cost is basically your assumption?
Yes. Based
Okay.
on my years of experience, yes, sir.
Okay. So that's really, we don't know what the cost is the bottom line. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm here to support this petition. I've never been up here before, but we've lived in that area for a long time off of 122nd, and it's the only place between Meridian and MacArthur where there's this kind of traffic and danger trying to get off of Maiden Lane and coming in. Trying to get into Maiden Lane off of 122nd is extremely difficult as well. I appreciate your attention.
Sure. Anybody else that would like to speak on item 5E? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got our comments before you. One thing I'm going to draw your attention to first off, it's on the first page of the staff report. This particular item has been presented to the Commission in two prior times. There was once in 2012 and again in 2015. Under the traffic entering volume section of the initial data summary at the top of your sheet, you'll notice that the volumes on both streets, 122nd Street and Hidden Creek Boulevard, have increased over the years. In 2012, the traffic entering volume on Hidden Creek was 696 vehicles per day, and that was based on the level of development within the addition. In 2015, it had risen to 891, and our last count, it was 1,138. At this point in time, this particular intersection meets 2 of the 9 warrants for considering the use of signalized traffic control. It meets the 8-hour volume warrant and the 4-hour vehicular volume warrant. There have been no collisions recorded at this intersection since its construction. Review of traffic data indicates that it does meet warrants 1 and 2 of the MUTCD. Now, the manual also further recommends that a traffic signal should not be installed unless an engineering study indicates that installing a signal will improve the overall safety and operation of the intersection. With respect to the overall safety of the intersection, I mean, it doesn't have a collision history yet, so there's no improvement to be made there. As far as improving the overall operation of the intersection, it would introduce an opportunity for those that are wanting to turn into the addition or to exit the addition. It would allow for a break in traffic for those individuals. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the Commission, and staff has got this written such that if the Commission is going to recommend the installation of a signal at this intersection, it should be subject to Northwest 122nd Street being widened for an eastbound left turn lane into the addition. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have on this application.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
Move approval of the application with the widening aspect of the left turn lane.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5E to include staff comments from Commissioner George. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion on this item? Yes, sir.
My only concern is the lack of collision history. It's, like staff had mentioned, that we put signs in to help the situation. I could see where this would hurt the situation more than it would help at this point in time with the collision history or lack of for this intersection.
Okay. Sir?
Is the neighborhood aware of the length of time that it would take to install this, given it would be funded by public funds? And approximately how long, roughly, would it be before something like this could get constructed?
You want to take it?
Well, at this point in time, it would go as an unfunded project. I mean, that's discussed in at the tail end of the staff report, because it's an unfunded project, meaning that there are no funding source already dedicated to build it. It could be funded using basically surplus funds from other projects in the 2017 General Obligation Bond Program, but those funds would be surplus upon completion of the other projects that have already been identified. Or there's always a possibility that under the city's Better Streets, Safer Cities sales taxes, that there may be funding available to build something to that, an intersection improvement using funds from that source. Otherwise, if there aren't any funds in that, it would probably go to a future bond issue. The last bond issue was the 2017 General Obligation Bond. Prior to that, the bond issue was in 2007. So it could be some time before funding becomes available for a project of this size.
So we just wanted to make sure that you were aware it doesn't happen this week.
Right, and generally speaking, about the fastest turnaround I've seen on a project from the time it was approved through the commission to actual construction was just over 2 years. And that's kind of, that's a rarity. More often than not, an unfunded project takes, I would say closer to 10 years from the time approval from this body to the time that you see it turned on out in the field.
And the point that we would counsel anybody who would have something of this type of project is we don't control funds. We just approve the need. City council and your city councilmen are the people that would move projects higher on a list or not. Okay? So if it goes through the normal system, it could be up to 10 years. Okay? That's a good point. Anything else on item 5E? Okay, sir, if you come up to the microphone, please.
What does it take from the city council to get a proposal for cost? I'm hearing 2 years and 10 years. A lot of these people will be dead by that time. Hopefully not. What I'm trying to understand is there is a cost. I'm in business, a lot of businesses. We go to get bids for all kinds of things. So I'm not familiar with the city. I've never been a member. But the question I have is, how do you go about, if you were going to do this in 6 months, getting a cost? And I ask the question for this reason. I'm guessing there are 200 homes, maybe more, in the area where we live. I have no idea whether those homeowners would participate in such a cost. They might if they knew what the cost would be, because it is very, very dangerous there. Immaterial the fact that we've been lucky that there have been no accidents, very lucky. And of course, I don't think anyone in this room would like to wait until 5 people are killed and then all of a sudden we qualify on whatever your criteria is of numbers of 9. So a fallback thought is, like in any other circumstance, if we knew what the real cost was, independent contractor, maybe selected by the homeowners out there, then at least we could petition all the people who live there and see if they would like to accelerate this process. Now, $500,000 is probably a number that 200-300 homes wouldn't participate in. Maybe, maybe not. But if we knew what a number was, at least it's something we could talk about.
Well, what I would recommend from here is for that, you would probably send a letter to the city staff, to ask if they could conduct that survey so you could find out that information. I don't think the city council would have to be, unless the city staff said, no, we're not going to spend the money.
Well, certainly there's another approach. Whoever from the city puts up streetlights routinely, they have a historical cost of what it costs.
And that's where the staff was going off of that number.
I understand.
Okay.
But if the equipment was known where it was purchased or could be purchased, and if the city approved it, then you could have families pay for the cost to ensure
Which is how
that.
most of these are done. These are all done by non-city workers.
No, I understand.
So the city
For instance, let's say I went to a contractor. I said, can you put up a street light here as long as it meets the approval of the city? Contractor said, sure. Well, where's he going to get the street lights from? Somebody supplies it here. So all I'm trying to do is come up with a plan by which at least these homeowners could see the possibility of having a street light.
Right, and again, I would recommend you just send a letter to the staff
of the city,
to his office.
Okay, fine.
And then he'll route it to the correct place. That would then be able to decide, is there enough city funding to do a study? Because right now that would be
let's say we did our own study.
They would probably be able to tell you how to accomplish one, how to go out for different contractors.
Okay, what I'm trying to say, obviously, is rather than depend upon the city or city council or anybody else, just take a business approach, like I would do with any other project in my businesses. What will it cost, turnkey, to put up a street light there? That is just a very simple question.
Which is what happens.
Could I comment?
Oh, please, go ahead.
Beg pardon?
Well, if I would, what you're speaking of, what I would do is hire an engineer to do the estimate. Hire someone to do the
But there's-
documents and send it to the city and say, I
There's
want
no
to do
point
it.
in doing that unless the city accepts that it can be done if we pay for it. So you have a chicken and the egg here. Why would we put out the money to do that and then know what it is, come to the city, and the city says no? So,
Well, sir, no, just...
Wait a minute,
Just to make it clear, here, wait, hold on a second. Just to make it clear, sir, if you want to have a study done to determine a cost to install there, the city would be able to give you the information of what a road has to look like,
sure.
to widen the road, what the cost of street signals are.
Okay.
They have all that information.
Okay.
And there are contractors out there
Who do
that
this all the
that
time.
do that all the time, and they would probably be able to give you that information. Who are those people?
Okay.
And then, of course, you would call them and say, could you go look at this and give me a cost? Well, of
Sure.
course, they'll bill you for that.
Well, I don't think we're worried about, they may or may not bill you if they think they're going to get a job, so.
Again, that's right, sir. And then, once that package is there, then like you said, if you now know $322,000
Whatever it is.
in 2 cents, then you could proceed on, as you were thinking, maybe have the neighborhood, and we've done that before. Business, usually it's a large corporation that would like a street light or a street
Right.
signal, and we approve it under the condition that they pay for it, and it's done in a month.
And you have to approve the specs?
That's what the city does.
Okay.
Oh, yes, sir. So there is a system for that.
Please understand, I don't know if this will fly. We've
No.
only been there a year and a half.
Yep, no.
I've just seen how many houses there are in there and how dangerous it is, so
Oh,
I'm
sure.
just trying to find a solution.
And that's where I'm saying, if you think it needs to be brought up in front of these other 100 projects that have already been approved and are waiting, that's where city council gets involved in that stuff, and that's their job, is to allocate money.
But what I'm hearing is that even if the city council and whoever has to approve this said, okay, we think this has such priority, it's still going to be perhaps 2 to 10 years before it's accomplished?
Well, then it goes into the normal budgeting system where there are possible surplus funds every year, where the city council will determine where the surplus funds go to, or bond issues. They come up with a funding strategy using the staff recommendations.
Well, please
So-
understand, I've never done this
No.
before, so I'm just trying to apply.
Those are very good thoughts, and like I said, usually when these come in for a large corporation at a major intersection, or they're building a whole new
Shopping center,
shopping mall, whatever, they come in and they know basically how much it's going to cost. You're exactly right. They already have all that information, and what we say is, yes, it's good, with the understanding that the applicant will go ahead and pay for it, as we did with the crosswalk here. And so all that information can be gotten for you,
All right.
at least where to go get it. And of course, there's probably a cost associated with an actual study, and now that would have to be thought about, and maybe the city council would help you on that. That would be my recommendation.
Well, I appreciate that very much. At least it's some alternative.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir. I very much appreciate the idea, concept of the neighborhood looking into taking on something like this as a neighborhood project. It's an expensive one. But if that's something that the neighborhood is willing to look into, what might be smart would be for you guys to maybe take a month opportunity, visit with your neighborhood, find out what information that you can, and come back to us with a decision on this, because is it not protocol that whoever's paying for it would be in it today, or could they come back and say, we have the funds to build it, and let's do it?
An applicant can
Microphone, sir. Thank you.
I was about to say, an applicant,
It's been my experience that you have to go loaded for bear. To go to 200, 300, 400 homeowners and say, would you like to have a street light up there? Everybody's going to raise their hand. Oh, but it's going to cost you $2,000 a house. Hands may go down. So you have a chicken and the egg here. You first have to know the rules of the game. You have to know what's it going to cost, and what kind of approvals do you have to receive from the appropriate authorities. Then when you sit down, like we have 4 gated communities, there's a president of each association. So at least you can get with the president of each association with the information. They in turn can go to their homeowners. I don't know how many other homes there are in that area that are not in gated communities, but a lot. So you can put a flyer together, but you have to have your information to get any kind of a reasonable response. Everybody's going to say yes until it's going to come out of their pocket.
All right, very good. So the question to staff is, do we, if a year from now funding comes from a private source, can they just go ahead and press on as long as they meet all the standards?
yes. Because what would happen is they would be responsible for having construction drawings prepared. And from those drawings, that's where a more exacting figure relative to the construction cost is going to come out, because that will take care of any changes to utilities that might be driven, like you might need to relocate a water line, you might need to make some storm drain adjustments, or you may need to build some storm drain as part of the system.
You gave me the correct idea earlier on when you said there are contractors out there that have been doing this for the city before I ever came along. So me having the names of 3 or 4 contractors that put in bids to do this work, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about, and I can talk with them intelligently. So can I approach the city with names of several, you're not going to choose any one and show prejudice, that have done this work before? Then I can contact them and I'll get a ballpark cost.
Yes, sir.
Without any detailed studies. That'll come later. But initially, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I'll get an idea of what they've done it before. I've never put in street lights before. I have no idea what it would cost. And you're bringing up other issues I hadn't even thought about, widening a street and so forth. But there will be people who know that. I'm just trying to get directed to reach those people, and then we won't have to take
Right,
much
and the
more.
staff will be happy to work with you on that.
Who do I contact?
Right here.
You can contact my office, and if you leave contact information here, we can reach you. Okay, then we've got your contact.
All right.
A helpful point for the neighborhood is there's an organization called the Neighborhood Alliance of Central Oklahoma. They're a 501c3. They work with neighborhoods all the time on neighborhood projects of all different cost levels and ideas. You would visit with Georgie Roscoe at the Neighborhood Alliance. She could share with you whether or not a project like this would be something that a neighborhood could apply for, where the funds and the contributions that the neighborhood and even possibly commercial entities on your boundaries that may want to help participate in funding something like that, those contributions are made to the Neighborhood Alliance, and they are tax-deductible contributions for contributors. And then when the project is all put together and all the ducks are in the row, the Neighborhood Alliance sends back that money to your neighborhood to pay for that project. So it's not, in my opinion, an unattainable goal. Just wanted to share that with you. We're trying to help you.
Okay. Sir, did you have a comment?
I do. All I can see is this overhead. How many neighborhoods are serviced by this one entrance exit? Because I'm sorry, did I misunderstand and hear that there were several gated neighborhoods in there? I guess the end question I'm getting to is, are there multiple neighborhood associations in there?
I would really need to turn this over to Peter. We've only lived there a year and a half. I would tell you that when you go off of 122nd North on Maiden Lane, we drove all around there before we chose a home in this gated community. I'm just guessing there are 200 or 300 homes in there,
Right.
all served, as they pointed out, only one way in and one way out,
Right.
onto 122nd.
Right. The question I'm getting to, though, how, and maybe you might need to answer this. Okay.
Okay, see.
Yeah, that helped, the number of homes and how, and when you were doing this, again, it was mentioned that each one has a president. Did you reach out to them and kind of coordinate with them on?
Sir, if you come up to the microphone, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
And would you start over again with all the numbers again, as you already said?
Peter Capadona, 12404 Maiden Lane. There's approximately 5 subdivisions. They're all not all gated communities. One is not. They're finished building in there.
And then you also said about 200 houses is your...
Yes, at least 200 houses.
Okay. And all I was just getting at is when you were working on this, each of those, it sounds like they have an organized neighborhood association.
Yes.
Did you kind of work with
I contracted the builder who did the whole place, and he's not here. But I didn't contact all the HOAs.
Okay.
I could have, but...
The only thing I just wanted to add, since Rob brought it up, I wanted to piggyback. The Neighborhood Alliance would be a great asset for you to help.
Right.
Working with each of those neighbors and getting them in, because this is a significant change of traffic pattern here. You want buy-in from those residents as well, just on understanding this could be changing, to kind of help you maybe organize and get a few meetings set up. The Neighborhood Alliance, as he mentioned, can help you with that as well, because I know that probably seems daunting as well, but I do encourage you to reach out to them in that capacity to help organize everybody.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else wanted to talk about item 5E? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5E, which includes staff comments from Commissioner George, second by Commissioner Schuline. Can we have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, we all go on now to item 5F, Kia Trout. To consider a request for the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of North Pennsylvania Avenue and Northwest 169th Street. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, hold on one second. Hi, sir. So if you come on up, you already have your blue form. If I could have your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm actually her next door neighbor. Anyway, my name is Charles James. I live at 17112 Wales Green Avenue, Edmond, Oklahoma, 73012. But technically, we're in Oklahoma City, but we're at 164th and Penn. Last month, we presented another person. We have 2 entrances into Fenwick, which comprises probably around 700 homes between non-gated and gated communities. One is at 164th and Fenwick Boulevard, and the one we're talking about today is at Pennsylvania and 169th Street. As other people have noted, with the growth of the city, we've had a huge volume of traffic increase along the years, and the police over the last month have positioned either motorcycle police or squad cars, et cetera, to issue tickets. The speed limit in this area is 40 miles an hour, and they've done very well in getting the speed down, but the volume of traffic is still there. It's almost impossible to make a left-hand turn out of the addition during the higher volume times of work and after work hours. I typically don't come out of the addition after I get home in the evening, not necessarily because of the traffic. I just don't have anything to do in the evening, but the big hours, though, are those hours we all know, which are the morning and afternoon rush hours. You have on 164th people feeding in off of Hefner Parkway, coming down 164th. They would be trying to make a left-hand turn into the addition. It'd be difficult to do that. Those coming out of the addition, it's difficult to make a left-hand turn. Sometimes it's difficult to make a right-hand turn as well. But anyway, I don't have any particular studies at hand. We had a previous homeowner that did take some pictures, et cetera, of the intersection during rush hour. She, again, was not able to attend, and unfortunately, I'm the only person here, so I don't have a lot of information to back things up with, but that gives you an overview. I believe you're already aware of the problem because we have had police representatives out trying to get the speed down, though, in that addition, though, near the addition, primarily on Pennsylvania. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5F? Okay, and just before we go to staff, do you have some input, reference what he was talking about, sir?
Yeah, correct. The solo motor unit has written 165 citations in the past 30 days in that area on Pennsylvania and 164.
How many?
165 citations.
Yeah, I'm surprised not more than that, but that's great. And I know they have had a presence there, and really appreciate that, by the way, because the speeds you go from 164th Street north and or going south either way, that 178 known as 2nd Street in Edmond to 164th. That's what I'm primarily familiar with. I don't usually do the 150th Street, but anyway, yeah, I really do appreciate their support in trying to get the speed down. But again, the volume of traffic is still there, so even at 40 miles an hour, it's still a challenge trying to make a left-hand turn. But thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, staff input, please.
All right. Well, this matter was continued from the Commission's March 18th meeting at the direction of the Commission so that a signal warrant analysis could be performed at the intersection of North Pennsylvania Avenue and Northwest 173rd Street. When this item was considered in March, there was a companion item to it that was submitted by same applicant, which was for a traffic signal at Fenwick Boulevard and Northwest 164th Street. That particular signal was approved by the Commission. That was item 5F at the March 18th agenda. What is different between this report from last month and this month is we included a summary of our warrant analysis at Penn and Northwest 173rd Street. That particular location did not meet any of the signal warrants that are in the manual on uniform traffic control devices, didn't have a collision history to meet any warrants, and it also did not meet any of the traffic-based warrants. At this time, should the Commission consider approving a signal at this location, it would be subject to staff recommendation that Pennsylvania Avenue be widened for a southbound left turn lane at Northwest 169th Street. So action on this particular request will be at the discretion of the Commission. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have relative to it.
All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5F?
Motion to disapprove.
Okay, we have a motion to disapprove from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Miller. Do we have any discussion on item 5F?
So last month, just so I'm clear, the proposed spot meets two or one criteria or two?
It meets one warrant.
One warrant, and then it came up, well, maybe there's a better spot on Penn for a light, and so we said, well, why don't we look at this other intersection? That other intersection has less traffic than this one, because it met zero.
Right, it doesn't meet any warrants.
Okay, but this intersection still does meet one warrant.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and this subdivision has how many homes? Between 700 homes.
That's just in Fenwick, and you have Copper Creek immediately north of it.
Yeah.
There is a street that you can access out, it's called Platten Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go, if you zigzag, you
go north.
You should come up and address the microphone.
Yeah.
Sir, if you could start over again at the microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, so from 169th Street, Platten Drive going north, you can eventually get to 178th Street.
Mm-hmm.
However, I couldn't hear, you've had a light approved for 173rd and Penn? Is that at Copper Creek?
No, we
don't have anything approved.
We approved one for Fenwick and 164th.
Right,
that's
right, and that's on Fenwick Boulevard and 164th Street.
Well, it just came up last time that there ought to be a light somewhere in that mile, and so which intersection would be better? The 173rd intersection or the 169th intersection? So we did a study to find out which intersection is better. And I guess it comes out that 169th is in fact a better intersection for a light.
169th is better than 173.
Yes.
But I think at 173, you have Copper Creek on one side, and there's another addition.
Which made it seem like that would be a better intersection.
Right.
But I guess it doesn't.
And I apologize, I believe as you had mentioned something about a center turn lane, possibly.
Yeah, the city recommends that we put in a center turn lane if the light gets approved. Okay. So
that was your recommendation?
Yes.
But today it's not approved?
Well, so right now there's a motion to not approve it.
Right.
But we haven't voted yet.
Okay, and then when will that be?
We're getting ready to vote.
Oh, well, right. Okay, let's see what happens then. We'll come back later then.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else wanted to speak on item 5F? Okay, we have a motion.
I do.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
I have a problem proving a signal that only meets a 4-hour warrant. That means, I know that your signal right now meets a 4-hour warrant. That means that the morning and the afternoon is the only time. That's 4 hours. That's 20 hours of the day that it doesn't meet a warrant. Now, Pennsylvania is an arterial street, a major arterial for people trying to get to work. The 173rd, I don't know, with the school being there and whether that's going to develop. The only question I had about 173rd is the oil field owns the property on the west side.
Right.
They're at 169th. So there's not going to, is that ever going to be developed into housing?
I have no idea. But, and I understand what you're saying. It's just that those hours, coincidentally, is when people are coming and going to work, coming home from work. It is problematic for the people who live in the addition, though, trying to access if they want to get on Pennsylvania. I guess they could go right, but then you almost have to go round about a mile, kind of backtrack to get back to where they want to go, though. Because their objective is to go south, not to go north, coming out of the addition in the morning. If you're coming from 178th Street and you're going south trying to make a left turn on 169th, that's virtually impossible. Your second choice would be go down to 164th. But again, you're going to face the same challenge until you put a light in at 164th and Fenwick. There's a lot of people trying to get in and out of that addition at certain times of the day. There's been times when the traffic coming out of the addition is backed up trying to get on left turns. So typically what I do, since I drove a lot in Houston, I go through the path of least resistance and I make a series of right turns, but it's not the quick way. And sometimes you go a mile out of your way to do that.
We just approved a signal that met the 8-hour warrant on another location.
That was at 164th and Fenwick Boulevard?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just saying that given time, maybe there'll be enough traffic to meet an 8-hour warrant there. But we have to consider the road users too when we consider where to put all these traffic signals.
Right.
Because they delay somebody.
Right.
And not just for 4 hours,
right. 24
hours, depending on which direction you're traveling.
Right.
So, and that's a concern. If it gets up to an 8-hour warrant or each more than one warrant, that would change my mind. But I have a hard time proving a signal that only meets a 4-hour warrant.
Yeah, well, it's understandable. Well, I think by the police representation, his reports are, and that has kept the speed down, which is definitely needed. But the volume is still there. So I have nothing to counter what you're saying, though, other than that you obviously have rush hour, you have non-rush hours, and that's when the people in that addition are trying to gain an exit or entrance into the addition, though.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just sharing my feelings with you.
Well, fine. Everybody's got one. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I guess a question for staff real quick on lights, modern day lights. You have put stuff in the ground, so when somebody pulls up, it turns. It starts a process of changing, and I guess it's also set on time. If a car's too light or a motorcycle, eventually it'll change anyway. But it's like, wouldn't that be something you'd do on 169th? When you say you're going to put in a light or a signal in an intersection, that goes into the process, right? Whether or not it's part of the whole system or not?
Right. Well, every signal that we put in will have some form of detection on it.
It does?
Most of our detection is radar-based detection now, but it'll pick up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, but now how that works is, the 4 hours that it meets the warrant means there's enough traffic on both sides to stop the next the other. Now, the other time, only one car can pull up and stop all the traffic on Pennsylvania till he gets a green light, and then a clearance interval, and an all-red interval, and then it goes back to Pennsylvania. That's going to happen every time a car pulls up there. Even with a delay detector of 3 or 4 seconds, it will impede the traffic on Pennsylvania when it's not warranted. I'm just telling you that's how.
That's just like all of the
You can say a signal is fully actuated. That's true, we did that. And then if they're working all the time, sometimes they don't work, and then now it's got a cycle every time.
Right.
So now
65th in May.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
You know.
Several of those.
Pull up
Anyway, I'm
there,
just saying.
stop, nobody's around.
Yep.
You know. But, you know, there's 700 homes, and probably about 450 of them come out of this intersection every day, in and out every day. So, I mean, it's, oh.
Okay, anybody else wanted to speak on item 5F? Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5F from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. All right, we go on now to item 6, citizens from comments. Comments from citizens. Anybody out there want to say anything more? All right, then we'll go on now to the reports and other items. Item 7, go on here to Commissioner Littlefield.
There's an ASAP form before you. Chairman, would you prefer to go around the horseshoe and get reports before we address something like that?
No,
just go for it.
No, this will be part of the subcommittee's effort.
Prior to addressing that, a municipal councilor, welcome back. A couple of months ago, the municipal councilor at the time offered to do a workshop for the commissioners where we could learn more and understand more about the Open Meetings Act. And if you guys agree, I think it'd be a good idea to look into that. I'd like to learn more about, can we share each other's contact information? Can we share each other's email information? If there's somebody working on a subcommittee, for example, do they have the ability to reach out to another commissioner and ask a question non-quorum related? That's important to me to thoroughly understand, so I know that we're doing it right. But if we could get that scheduled sometime this summer, I think it'd be really helpful for all of us. Okay, regarding the proposed traffic calming measures that Chairman Kula asked the subcommittee to look into, really identifying inventory to put in that, and also, in addition to that, to try to work up some kind of costs for these items. And JB and I worked on this, and we didn't have a problem coming up with what seems like a reasonable first set of traffic calming measures that we've talked about for a very long time. I still like the idea of the cardboard sheep, but I left that out. But I think that this is a good start. Some may want to be omitted, and I think that both staff and commissioners have every right, and even neighborhoods, to come forward with ideas that could be added into this. With regard to costing them out, I ran into a lot of trouble making sense of the ability to do that. We could come up with like a 72-inch round Kashane, for example. Well, how can we put a price on that in a shopping list and present that to a neighborhood where costs change constantly, where the environment where we would consider putting one has a particular challenge that makes it more costly than another environment that may be less costly? And Stuart and I had a little bit of dialogue about maybe considering the costing part be more practical if a neighborhood did present a request for something where staff could work at that time and perhaps give them an estimate of what to expect something like that would be. I don't think it would be smart or effective to give an actual quote because there are uncertainties every time you start digging into a street or digging into a right-of-way. There could be costs with revocable permits. There could be costs with Board of Adjustments issues for neighborhoods trying to do these things. So that's kind of where we are to present to you folks. And JB, do you have anything to add to that?
So what you're saying is, here's a list of 10, 12 things that you guys have come up with. Now, the next step, is it to formally get these things put into the program? Is that our next step, Stuart? Is that kind of how this would kind of go?
I suppose it could be. We'd have to run through and look at each one of these particular alternatives. Because right now, the one thing that seems to have the greatest amount of interest would be like the use of speed humps or speed cushions. Mm-hmm. As far as the other items that have been listed on this, we really haven't been contacted by any neighborhood association that's even thrown that out as something that they're considering. So like I said, speed humps and speed cushions have been the only thing that we've been approached recently.
Well, how about, like, let's just take an example, one that jumped out, street narrowing, sideline painting. So you would do a study to kind of look and see, okay, a road would be 16 feet wide or a lane be 16 feet wide. The concept of making white lines and yellow lines go in to make it a narrower road and then back out, which would be a common effect. You would do a staff assessment on that item, and then you would say, yes, Oklahoma City is okay with that, and let's put it into the box. Let's put it into something that a neighborhood could do if they wanted to do that, and if it fits right for that road. And then you would go through all of them, and then you'd come back and say, curb bump outs, where you would take the curb and actually come out, instead of painted, you would probably come out with some bumps, and you go, you know what, that's not what the city would like. We don't like that to be put into the options that are available. Is that where we're just saying is you could go through this list and kind of give a staff engineering feel off of your experience what could possibly work to calm drivers down in neighborhoods? Is that the next step?
Well, if we were to pursue any of the items that are on this particular list, the one thing that would be incumbent on us in order to add that to the program would be a determination as to how effective they may be. Because there's a lot of things that people will pursue they think that will make a big difference as far as neighborhood speed control goes that have very little effect. And so to put something out there with the expectation that it's going to be, the solution for their neighborhood, I don't think we'd want to do that offhand. But, we're always open to looking at pretty much everything that's on here. I mean, there's one item that's listed on here where you'd paint like the word slow or 25 miles an hour on the street. Coming up later in the agenda is a report from staff. Now, granted, it's not really what I consider to be a good report from staff because it's based on the intersection art that was done at a couple of intersections on 12th Street. And the reason why I say that it's not a good report from our perspective is because the artwork is pretty much all but gone in one location, and it's pretty well faded in another, and it's less than 5 months old. So as far as saying this would be a great thing for your community or for your neighborhood to do to control speeds, at this point in time, we don't have valid data for you to make an assessment. If you were to say that the intersection art is going to have zero impact on speed, I'd say, well, we haven't given you anything worthwhile yet. We would have to do something where it is in place and it has to be a lot more durable, in which case we can get a good controlled before and after study. Right now we've got a great before study and a great after study as if it had never been there.
So I think where I'm lost is I think we're at a point where we're in a stuck loop here where we have a program, and I thought the program was to put things in a box that when neighborhoods came, they could look in the box, see some options, and then work with the staff and see if it would work and all that kind of thing. Where I think right now we don't have that, and I think that was part of the project, was to put things in there that could be thought about. So that's where I'm saying this is what the subcommittee came up with as a first look. Is this something the staff could look at and say, yes, I want to put it in there as a possible option?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, if you put it in there as a possible option, you also need to let people who are looking at it know what they can expect to achieve for the money that they're going to put into it. That's the most important thing, because the last thing you want to do is have someone invest in something and they don't get any results out of it.
Well, in fact, and then you would even say that on a couple of them is,
Exactly.
Here's something that could work, and the cost of paint and a roller is $5,000, but we're not really sure if a visual narrowing of the road would really actually stop it. So you may be out $5,000 and your road looks bad because it's all wore out paint.
Exactly.
But you could put that into the thing and they could actually see that. And then that's where I'm going is I think y'all, the subcommittee and the staff have done a great job on looking at the problem that we have here in the city. We've come up with a program, but we have nothing right now to go to the next step, I don't think. And I think this is the start, which this is what I was thinking about last month, was something like this that could get put in with staff comments as the experts, saying this may not work, this would be a risk if you want to take the risk and try to lower it, whatever comments you would want, and then we would have it ready to go. So something like that could be done. You could take this and put this in.
I was about to say, because in the middle 90s, I'd done a study when I worked for a different local city, and it was all based on speed humps. And we'd done extensive testing before. We'd done a lot of speed monitoring before, and then we'd done speed monitoring after. And not only was it in an after situation, we also made modifications to how humps were placed along the road. And, I mean, I can provide that information. Granted, it's about 20 years old at this point in time, but as far as, like, the 85th percentile speed change on this particular road, it happened to be in Midwest City on a street called Jarman Drive. It took an 85th percentile speed of about 35 miles an hour, and this is on a 25-mile-an-hour posted road. And with the addition of speed humps, it dropped our 85th percentile to around 32 miles an hour. So if that's what if the neighborhood is desiring to seek, they want to see 25 on their street, and they're going to invest money to get 25 on their street, I would say this is not where you want to invest your money, because you're going to go through a lot of time, a lot of expense, and you're going to achieve minimal results. And I think that most people, if they want results, they want to know what is available to them that is going to have a very real and meaningful impact, as opposed to something where they can just take a stab
And I
at it.
take this whole program and the whole effort over the last 3-4 years as, even if it comes out that says none of this stuff matters, a program like ASAP doesn't do anything, people are going to speed in a neighborhood that's a through neighborhood, on a straight road, wide open. Even if it says that, then we've at least tried. And then we'll try to find another solution, another program, another something that could help neighborhoods, because we've, as a group, have gotten tired of neighborhoods coming with these problems, and there's nothing we can do except to put a cop out there and write 160 tickets, So even if you do this effort and we put it in there and these neighborhoods come in and they look at it and you give them the true counsel that just because you make little narrow roads doesn't mean they'll slow down. If they want to try it, great, then we'll get all that data. And if, like you said with the humps and everything, it gives a minimal change, that may be sufficient for them. It may be sufficient for us as a group to continue making that recommendation. Or at some point, we may say, we don't want to make these recommendations because it's just wasting $5,000, $6,000. But then at least we would know. And I think we're at a point where we need to get to that next step, have something there that people can, when they come here and they say people are speeding, and we'll say, get a hold of Stuart, look in the box, pull out a couple of these things, try it, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, well, that's all we can do, because we've worked on it. So I think that's where we're at. So I'm sorry if I jumped in on it.
I've appreciated every word that you've said. I know I've said it, if I've said it once here, I've said it close to 100 times here. Not one of these is going to be effective applied singularly. We have spoken to neighborhood alliance groups, neighborhood groups. Eric Wenger has had us do presentations at groups of neighborhoods with the, I can't remember the name of the class. And it's the constant dialogue is 2 or 3 of these things have to be present in an environment to have an effect. So I think it's really important that we step outside the box in the way we think sometimes about sideline striping and just laying it down on a road and studying it and see what happens without giving attention and regard to the other 2 elements that might already be present or one element that might be present, and suggest to the neighborhood, along with these sideline stripes, you've got on-street parking, but you're absent of trees. So we're not going to know unless we try. That's just the way it is. But I have an issue with taking each element singularly and studying each element singularly and their impact on traffic without considering it's going to take multiples of them to have the desired effect. I believe that to be the case. Everything that JB and I read and studied for those 2 really intense years of looking into this, that is what we read in every municipality, Canada, Europe, the United States, where there was an impact on calming traffic. 2 or 3 things, not just one thing. And I can't stress that enough as we move forward, considering these elements and putting them in there and getting the neighborhood to come forward and sitting down with them and looking at their environment and going, okay, let's try these 2 additional things in addition to the one that you have. Or you're void. Let's look at 3 things that you need to do and try them and see what happens. And I really appreciate the negative side of how things can go, how things could possibly be ineffective. And I really believe that on a one-by-one basis, these would be ineffective. So that's my plea.
So I think from here, what we are asking the staff to do is take this information, the ones that they agree that could be a solution, get put into the box, and the ones that they don't agree to, then they could present to us and say, no, this item, I don't want it in the box or whatever. And then we now have the program ready for people to use. Because right now, we don't have anything in there that they could have as an option. We would ask them to. So I think if staff, if you could look at this, try to get something in there, insert it into the program, in the pending box or whatever, and then we have a program ready that whenever people have something, we can say, go to this place, look at these things, find a general contractor, figure out the cost. Do you want to do it? Great. You approve it? Boom. And then we track it, and we see, and then we start to get data, and then we can modify as the program goes on. But right now, we're stuck, I think.
This is our start.
Okay.
I just want to follow. Are you thinking that as an applicant would call in to Stewart's office and say, we have, because how it seems to start, it seems like it's stop signs. We have stop signs and we have speeding. When that keyword of speeding is mentioned, it's my understanding of this program that we hope that we can immediately reroute them.
Exactly.
Say, okay, here's where we need to go.
Staff would provide that input,
Yeah.
and then when it comes to us, and they say, no, we still want stop signs, let's say that they don't want to pursue a traffic common,
Yeah.
they want their stop signs. So they come here, they go through the whole process as we've gone through, And then we would say, hey, didn't the staff, and he would put in his staff comments that I provided this information and they didn't want it, and it would create that whole talk, and maybe hearing it from us may be different than hearing it from him. That's one option. And the other one is, like you're saying, that they take this project and they go, okay, let's go back to the homeowners association. Yes, there's 700 houses. We all want to calm down in this area. We'd like to do 2 and 3. We got a general contractor. It's $10,000. We'll go ahead and pay for it. And then from my understanding, that wouldn't even come to us, right? And it would just get done. He would track it, and probably in his staff comments every month would just say, hey, this is what just happened.
Well, because I feel like it's too, and I mention this every time, I think, but when they come and we have speeding, we need stop signs. I understand that's what we have right now. But, and I've asked this before, we've seen neighborhoods where we've had a lot of stop signs go in. I still think we need to pull the data on that. And we need to find out is that calming the speeding issue, so we can also back that up and say, here's really what this looks like in there, to where we can start using stop signs as, stop signs are really, the purpose of stop signs is to organize an intersection, to help calm chaos in that intersection. So I think it's kind of, there's 2 ways we can look at that. There's data we can look at on these, which thank you for doing this. This is a great list. But there's also that data too that we go back to those stop signs at the intersection.
And there's a lot of history on the stop signs. That not just from here at the city, in the U.S., around the world. Maybe Stuart can pull some of that information about stop signs and some of the...
Yeah, any of the data, just so we have, all of that can kind of be presented together, to kind of help steer, where we need to go. Because I think these are great. I think all of these are just great items, and I echo what Commissioner Littlefield says. It's got to be done in 2s or 3s. So great work to this subject.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to comment. The issue with the stop signs, you could probably show that the speed was reduced if you put one every intersection. Then they'd come back and you'd say, oh, yeah, that works. But that ain't what they're for. And every one of the MUTCD will tell you right up there not to be used for traffic calming. They're to sign right away at an intersection. That's why they have warrants for them. Calming devices don't have warrants. They're just ideas that you can use to put in a neighborhood to see if that helps you. And where we ought to be looking at is showing the people, but it's how the neighborhoods that's got cul-de-sacs that a little bit of calming was designed into them is where you really don't have the speeding problem. And that would go a long ways. We need to tell people that when they're asking about that. There's some ways they might want to reconfigure the neighborhood or something at some time. Who knows?
Right. Okay. So, anything else, sir?
I think that's enough.
All right. Thank you very much.
First off, I'd like to thank Stuart for taking the time to give us the before and after chart, because based on that, it looks like we need to focus more on driver expectation than putting up speed signs, because they're going to drive the way they feel like they are able to drive, whether it be a neighborhood or a major artery. So I thanks Rob and Jay for taking the time to compile this list. But based on that chart, it looked like this is where our focus moving forward needs to go. Because no matter what we post it at, they're going to drive what they feel like they can drive. So thanks, Stuart, for taking the time to get that together.
Over to Commissioner
I think we've covered
Schuline.
everything. Pretty much. I would like to say that on the list, I think it'd be helpful if a neighborhood came in, if we could rank them in order of expense. Because there's a number of items that we can explain that they're only anecdotal evidence that they work, but at least these are less expensive things that the neighborhood could do, a combination of them perhaps, and increasingly, the more expensive items that as they can. But I really do appreciate Robbie putting this together too. And I want to ask one quick question about not signage, but the striping on our city streets. I know the new Safer Streets initiative has been working with the new surfaces are coming down and the new striping is working great, but there are a lot of intersections, like I'm thinking 23rd and Broadway, I don't think that's been striped in years, and it is so difficult to see your lane when you are driving through, particularly after a rain. I mean, there are no stripes at all in that intersection. It's 25,000 cars a day. I don't know how it works, but I wonder if we need to get another one in the city, maybe another thing that puts down the stripes on the roads, and just a question.
So is that just a normal staff function that they drive around and they see where stripes are bad and they put it on some sort of list?
I do have staff that when they're, I basically have like a sign and striping specialist, and when he's out, he'll compile a list of locations, and he'll let me know. A lot of times I'll see service requests from him that if he comes across a road that needs to be restriped, he'll give me that to sign, and likewise, if there's signs that are damaged or faded, I'll get those as well. But Oklahoma City covers over 600 square miles, and I have basically just one person in my office that would be tasked with that. But that doesn't mean that the people that work in traffic operations don't see these same things as well.
So there's your section that goes out and looks at spot areas, but there's a section in the city that has a plan?
That does the work.
That does the work. It has a plan that kind of says, okay, it's about time for this 5 miles of road to be done, and they make a plan to go do it, or?
I can't speak for traffic operations offhand as to how they take the data that they get and how they
Well, then maybe that's a good
decisions
point.
as to
Maybe
how to
you could
strike
ask
roads.
and maybe get some feedback on that.
I can inquire.
But I think that's a good point. When we had all the problems with all the different bridges, and we have the problems with the roads, and they go out there and they assess all the roads, and they've done that for the most current bond. And they said, this road is really bad, this is a medium, this isn't okay, and that's where they put all the money. Well, is there that kind of function in the city to look at all the striping? Is that kind of what you're asking? Could you ask somebody that? Is there that kind of function?
I'll inquire. I don't believe there is offhand.
Or is it just us up here driving around in our wards going, okay, here's the 50 miles that I saw this month, could you go stripe it?
Right. We get a lot of citizen comments. I mean, there are things that come into us through the Action Center, requesting everything from, roadways being restriped to signs being replaced. And we're very responsive to that, but Oklahoma City covers an awful lot of territory. It's a challenge to keep striping looking at a point where I think a lot of people would think it needs to be.
Okay.
Like JB's comment about, about striping not being easily seen, especially when road conditions are wet. That's even the case when striping is new, but it's exceptionally difficult when it gets relatively worn.
All right, very good point. Mr. Miller?
I can vouch for the striping crews. I used to run one of them. And they don't just go out on somebody's call. They have their list they got to go by, because those machines are expensive. It takes a lot of manpower and equipment to go get it done. But the thing is to get it in a list. They get it on their list. That's when it gets done.
Okay. Mr. George?
Yeah, I have a comment about the intersection. I think I've mentioned it once 4 years or so ago, 122nd and Hefner Parkway. The lights, I thought they were in the ground that you pull up, but what'd you say how does it?
Well, it depends. Most of the signals in the city are still relying on inductive loops that are cut into the roadway surface.
That one needs some big-time adjustment. When 122nd going west, that light will stay red way too long, and then the green is a left turn. What's holding everything up is there's the eastbound on 122nd, and I think there's a left turn arrow to get on Hefner Parkway to go north. Okay, that is way out of kilter. Okay, that will sit there for like 3 minutes, and there'll be people backing up almost down to Hefner Parkway, getting off, going north, and then 122nd will back up, 500 yards before, and there's nobody coming for like a couple of minutes. Can be 2 or 3 minutes, and nobody's coming that way, and everybody here is just waiting and waiting and waiting. So if you could take a look at it or have somebody, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
And then the other, did you say that the speed humps on a study you did went from 35 and it just went to 32 miles an hour?
For the 85th percentile, yeah.
Where was that? And were they too far apart? It seems like speed humps...
We tried different spacings to try and achieve better results.
Some speed humps you have to drop down to, say, 12 miles an hour or 10, or really slow to get over them. How big were these? Were they made to go at what speed?
Well, these humps were typically in the neighborhood of about 3.5, maybe 4 inches tall, and they'd be about 12 feet long.
Okay.
From the time your front wheels go over them to the time that they pass, finish passing over them, they're fairly long.
Right. I know there's some in Norman that it seems to me like it really slows people down, but I don't know, maybe they're higher or closer together or something.
That's the difference, and I think the term speed hump would be more of a generalized thing, and then back down, speed bump is what you put right in front of a major store where they got to go 1 mile an hour.
Yeah, you don't want those in the street. But anyway, that was surprising that it only dropped the speed 3 miles an hour.
Over to Commissioner Miller.
Just one question. I just need clarification. When we have the applications for signal lights, does it just take one letter of request to initiate that, to get to be an agenda item? I'll tell you why I asked that, because I think I wrongly am under the assumption that, like a stop sign, that there's a radius of people that are involved. Because I notice, you probably notice I ask the question a lot if other people in the neighborhood know. And I just clicked today and realized that maybe just one person can, am I correct? Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, traffic signal can be a request to be heard by the commission can be initiated by one person.
Just one person.
And there's no petition required.
And they don't have to talk to anybody else around, they can just go before. Okay, I didn't know that, thank you.
Which is, I believe, why the warrants are there. So there's one person wants to do something, he does the study, it doesn't have any help for anything, doesn't make it safer, and there's the input. Absolutely. Whereas a stop sign, it may be a little different. Yeah. Yes, we do look at the vehicle flow rate of the intersection, but it's not probably the same.
Right, and typically signals are along like the arterial roadway system. They're along major streets. Stop signs inside neighborhoods, those are the types of things that stop signs and parking controls in neighborhoods always have a petition requirement, because they affect, how you can park in a neighborhood, they affect traffic movement through a neighborhood, so that's why we allow at least the people within a 300-foot radius of the request to be contacted, so they, at least their voices gets heard in the process, even if it's just through the petition process.
Okay. Sir, LC. All right. Ma'am?
I would like to actually thank you, Commissioner Littlefield, for mentioning, if there is any other questions out there that you're wondering or would like to discuss, please let me know. Again, I wasn't aware of the request, and I would be glad to plan something, for instance, before next month's meeting or after next month's meeting. I'll send out an email to inquire who would like to attend, and if there's not a quorum, then just set the meeting, and if there is, I will follow up the invitation with scheduling email as well. But just to let you know, just look out for that 1 or 2 email, and hope to see you next month.
Okay. Staff, you got closing?
Okay, you've got our monthly report on signs of yield and stops that were administratively installed. There's also the speed studies that were done for the intersection art locations, which I commented on earlier. I don't believe, well, we conducted the studies, but I don't believe that they're suitable for making future decisions. There is one study that's also on North Tulsa Avenue, and that was in response to the North Coronado Heights Neighborhood Association, and we did that study as like a before study, and so now I think that Neighborhood Association president was talking to us about possibly using Tulsa Avenue as like a speed hump test site. I've not heard. We sent that information back about a month ago, and I haven't heard anything back from them, so I don't know if he's had opportunity to present it to the membership, or maybe he's reconsidering. Anyway, so we do have a before study on that. And beyond that, I just want to let you know that I probably will be out of town for the June meeting. So if you're looking at, or you want to start looking ahead at your calendar to see what you've got as far as design activities or other things for the month of June, you might want to consider that. Other than that, I've got nothing else to add.
Yes, sir.
With regard to the speed hump test, or the speed tables, speed humps, whatever that neighborhood is considering, is because that's a test, is the city picking up any of the cost of that, or is the total cost a burden on the neighborhood?
At this point in time, if it's through the ASAP even if it's a pilot program, there's no funding available on the city end I'm aware of that could be used towards that end. And everything else that's been put out in the ASAP program so far, the city's contribution would be through installation, not through the actual procurement of the materials, but just through installation.
Okay. Anybody else have any other business for the Traffic Commission today? All right, we're adjourned.